Imagine surviving the deadliest weapon ever created. One flash, one explosion, one city erased in seconds. For most people, surviving an atomic bomb would already be considered impossible. But what if that wasn't the end of the story? What if you escaped, returned home, went back to work the very next morning, and found yourself standing beneath another atomic bomb? It sounds like something written for a movie, something so unbelievable that most people would dismiss it as fiction. Yet every word of this story is true. This is the story of a man who witnessed the birth of the nuclear age. Not once, but twice. His name was Tsutomu Yamaguchi, an ordinary engineer, a loving husband, a father, someone who had no desire to become part of history. But history had already chosen him. Before the week was over, he would experience something no human should ever have to endure, and somehow, he would live to tell the tale. Summer. Japan was losing the war. Its cities had already been scarred by months of relentless bombing. Food was becoming scarce. Families lived with constant uncertainty. Every day carried the possibility that an air raid siren might be the last sound they would ever hear. But life didn't simply stop. Factories continued operating. Trains still carried passengers across the country. People still went to work. Among them was 29-year-old Tsutomu Yamaguchi. He worked as a marine engineer designing oil tankers for Mitsubishi. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was important. Like millions of others, he simply wanted the war to end so he could return to a normal life with his wife and infant son. In early August, his company sent him to Hiroshima for a 3-month business assignment. By August 6th, his work was finally complete. He packed his belongings, checked his documents one last time, and prepared to catch the train home. He couldn't have known that he was only hours away from becoming part of one of the darkest days in human history. At around 8 o'clock that morning, he was walking toward the train station. The streets were unusually calm. The sky above Hiroshima was almost perfectly clear. There were no explosions, no warning, no sign that anything extraordinary was about to happen. Then, he looked up. A lone American bomber drifted across the blue sky. It seemed strangely quiet, almost peaceful. No one around him realized that the aircraft carried a weapon unlike anything the world had ever seen, a weapon capable of changing history forever. And within seconds, Tsutomu Yamaguchi's life would never be the same again. At exactly 8:15 in the morning, the sky exploded with light. Not fire, not smoke. Light. A blinding white flash so bright, it seemed brighter than the sun itself. For a fraction of a second, everything stood perfectly still. Then the shockwave arrived. It threw Tsutomu violently through the air. The force knocked him unconscious. When he finally opened his eyes, the world around him had vanished. Buildings had collapsed into piles of rubble. Windows had disappeared. Roofs had been torn away. Smoke rose into the sky from every direction. Moments earlier, this had been one of Japan's busiest. Now, it looked like the end of the world. At first, Tsutomu couldn't understand what happened. He tried to stand. Pain shot through his body. His face and arms had been badly bummed. One of his eardrums had been damaged by the blast. Even breathing felt difficult, yet somehow, he was still alive. As he staggered through the ruins, he realized he wasn't alone. Thousands of people wandered through the destroyed streets. Many were silent. Soren called out for family members, would never answer. Others searched desperately for water. No one knew had caused the explosion. No one had a weapon like this before. Entire neighborhood seconds disappeared. Roads were buried beneath debris. Landmarks. People had known lives were simply gone. The city itself had become almost impossible to recognize, despite his injuries. Tsutomu found 2 of his co-workers. Against all odds, they had survived as well. Together, they searched for a way out of Hiroshima. Every step was painful, Every street revealed another reminder of just how completely the city had changed. As night fell, fires continued to burn across the horizon. The sky glowed an eerie orange. The world they had known only hours was gone forever. Still, Tsutomu had only one thought on his mind. He had to get home. He had to see his wife and his young son. He had no idea. Fate had one final test waiting for him. The journey out of Hiroshima felt almost impossible. Railway lines had been twisted, roads were blocked by debris, communication had collapsed. No one knew which routes were still open, yet, somehow, parts of Japan's railway system were still operating. It was nothing short of a miracle. Injured, exhausted, and wrapped in makeshift bandages, Tsutomu managed to board a train leaving the ruined city. The ride was painfully quiet. Some passengers stared into space. Others sat in silence, unable to process what they had just witnessed. There were no words that could explain what Hiroshima had become. Every passing mile carried Tsutomu farther from the devastation, but the images refused to leave his mind. The blinding flash, the collapsing buildings, the endless smoke rising into the sky. He wondered how many people had been left behind, how many families would never see each other again. Late that evening, he finally arrived home in Nagasaki. His wife was stunned to see him alive. She had no idea what had happened in Hiroshima. Neither did most of the country. Tsutomu embraced his family with all the strength he had left. For a brief moment, it felt as though the nightmare was finally over. But history had other plans. The next morning, despite his injuries, Tsutomu reported for work. His body ached with every movement. His bandages covered severe burns. One side of his hearing had been badly damaged. Yet he still believed it was his responsibility to show up. His supervisor looked at him in disbelief. "What happened to you?" Tsutomu began describing everything he had seen. He spoke about the blinding flash, the unimaginable explosion, an entire city disappearing in seconds. His co-workers listened, but many struggled to believe him. One bomb destroying an entire city? It sounded impossible. Surely he was exaggerating. Surely no weapon like that could exist. Tsutomu tried again. He explained that Hiroshima was simply gone. Not heavily damaged, not defeated, gone. The room fell silent. Then, without warning, someone noticed a bright light outside. Once again, Tsutomu looked toward the sky. For a split second, time seemed to stop. His heart sank. He recognized that light. He had seen it before, 3 days earlier, in Hiroshima. And then, history repeated itself. Another blinding flash consumed the city. Another shockwave tore through buildings. Another mushroom cloud rose into the sky. Nagasaki had just become the second city in history to experience an atomic bombing.
When the second explosion finally ended, Tsutomu found himself alive, again. The factory where he had been working had shielded him from the worst of the blast. It wasn't enough to spare him from more injuries, but somehow, it was enough to save his life. The odds were almost impossible to comprehend. In the span of just 3 days, he had stood inside 2 different cities. At the exact moments they became the only places in history to be destroyed by atomic bombs during war. Most people could barely imagine surviving one. Tsutomu had survived both. His wife and infant son also survived the bombing in Nagasaki. They had sought shelter just moments before the explosion. That single decision may have saved their lives, but survival came at a cost. The burns slowly healed. The broken bones recovered. Yet some wounds could never be seen. For years, he suffered from the effects of radiation exposure. His hearing never fully returned. His health remained fragile, and the memories never left him. Every bright flash, every loud sound, every August brought him back to those mornings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Surviving wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of a lifetime of remembering. For many years, Tsutomu rarely spoke about what had happened. Like countless survivors of the atomic bombings, he chose silence. Some memories were simply too painful to put into words. But as time passed, he realized something. The people who had witnessed those days would not live forever if they remained silent. One day, there would be no one left to tell the world what nuclear war truly looked like. So he began sharing his story, not because he wanted sympathy, not because he wanted fame, but because memory is fragile, and forgetting history can be dangerous. In 2009, the Japanese government officially recognized Tsutomu Yamaguchi as a survivor of both the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. It was a rare acknowledgement of an experience almost impossible to imagine. He continued speaking about peace until the end of his life. In January 2010, Tsutomu Yamaguchi passed away at the age of 93, but his voice did not disappear with him. Every time his story is told, it reminds us that behind every historical event, there are ordinary people whose lives changed forever. History often celebrates victories. It remembers powerful leaders, famous generals, and decisive battles. But sometimes, the most important stories are about ordinary people: a husband, a father, an engineer, a man who never asked to become part of history, yet survived one of humanity's darkest chapters twice. Tsutomu Yamaguchi's story is not a story about luck. It is a story about endurance, about loss, about resilience, and about the responsibility to remember. Because history is more than dates and statistics. History is people. People who laughed, people who dreamed, people who loved, and people whose lives changed in a single flash of light. If we remember them, perhaps we become a little wiser, and perhaps we become a little less likely to repeat the mistakes that created those tragedies in the first place. Thank you for watching.